Reddit moderators are now attacking Kaceytrons' credibility in the lawsuit with Ethan Klein. Of course, I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney, and this is a Fast Facts video, the quick and dirty version of the latest in legal news. So this is one that is fresh off the presses. This is based on a filing that literally came out in the last 24 hours with additional evidence that is submitted by the Reddit mods. Remember, they are trying to fight back as part of this lawsuit because they are parties to the lawsuits with Frogan, with Denims, with Kaceytron, and they have an interest here in trying to hide, right? So, of course, we've got a PowerPoint for you today and to get into that. But if you're going to like this video, if you've been liking these topics, make sure to smash the like button on this video. And also make sure to subscribe to the channel. So first, let's get into Kaceytron. So obviously, she had her apology. Everybody took that for what it was. Obviously, this is something that she had to do as part of her settlement agreement, and this would be something that both Frogan and Denims will have to do if they ever decide to settle. Now, I'm a little bit more convinced at this point that Frogan will settle. Denims, it looks like, may be locked into trial, which is, of course, absolutely what we want. It is pure cinema. So I am absolutely here for Denims fighting this out as long as we can take it. Now, with Kaceytron, we also have, as a party to that, and as part of the other lawsuits, the Reddit moderators. And as we discovered, one of those moderators is actually an admin at Reddit. So we now know that they're not just somebody that was sitting around moderating a forum, but they actually work for Reddit themselves, which is very, very interesting and can bring in the broader corporation as a whole. But one thing they want to do is they want to hide guys. So after this settlement, of course, we have Kaceytron paying off all of her GoFundMe, all of her legal funds. That's all going to Ethan Klein. She gave a public apology. But importantly, and this is very important for the Reddit mods, she agreed to testify against Denims, Frogans, and the mods. So those people all have an interest in trying to stop or drop her credibility as a witness. So the Reddit mods are desperately trying to fight discovery and the revelation of their true identities, right? Because if people discover the true identities of these mods, of these, anonymous online people, that's going to be a very, very bad thing. It was previously for them, right? For them. It's a good thing for justice, I think, procedurally. Right. So procedurally, what they're trying to do is they're trying to file in court for immunity from disclosure by quashing subpoenas. And to me, this is very, very problematic. And I want to say this from a procedural standpoint. If people online are allowed to permanently hide and essentially never have any consequences for their actions, that's going to be a problem because they're going to create a class of people that can essentially attack people at free will, distribute information, etc., with absolutely no consequences in court and never facing justice. You're going to create kind of two separate systems of justice, one for people online and one for people offline. So procedurally, this is a ridiculous thing, them trying to quash the actual subpoenas. But what they are trying to do, and this is different, and there are pros and cons on this. Once again, I consider all sides fairly, and I try to give the best arguments here. So they have a better argument regarding the credibility of Kaceytron as a witness, and they've submitted some additional evidence regarding that surrender, regarding that particular, these particular pieces of evidence. This was submitted, as you can see at the top of this form here, on the 9th of December, and this is something where they submitted a declaration of one of the lawyers, of Leah Ross Vulick, who's bar number 343520. At the top there, you can see her as a member of Kronenberger Rosenfeld LLP. And this is as part of their motion, right, to quash the subpoenas. But what they're going to try to use this for as well is they can use this for later on evidence in court, saying, hey, look, Kaceytron is not a credible witness. So what's the standard and what's the question here? So the argument from Reddit is the Kaceytron apology makes her a non-credible witness, right? So she's not, when you put her on the stand, because she flipped sides, right? She's not going to be credible. And witness credibility in the U.S. really looks at these factors: consistency. So what are the statements? What's the evidence? Demeanor. Look at them on stand. What's their confidence, composure? Opportunity and ability to observe. What did they see? What do they know? What do they hear of themselves, right? What's perhaps hearsay, etc. Bias or motivation. That's going to be a big one. And then cooperation with the evidence. Does this line up with the evidence, what we know, the facts we have, maybe expert witnesses? And then, of course, character. So your reputation for truthfulness and or your criminal activity can damage your character. So minor inconsistencies generally do not damage credibility, and credibility is judged, of course, by the both the judge and the jury in different aspects, right? Especially in terms of admissibility of either testimony or evidence, etc. So let's break down this argument, the pros and the cons, once again, fairly balancing both sides. And if you like fair analysis, please smash the like button, guys. Once again, it helps us out here. So the Reddit argument and their really strongest points are that, hey, Kaceytron has a motivation to lie and or gain here through the settlement agreement, saying, hey, because she settled here, because there's, this sort of Damocles hanging over her head, she has to flip side. She has to go on this other side, right? And they're going to say, hey, look, she's now inconsistent. She's made prior statements and prior positions that are contrary to her apology. So her statements that she's making now, you really can't believe. Then, of course, there's a counter argument. The counter argument is that this is consistent with Ethan Klein's evidence and narrative, right? And it is common for parties to fold early in litigation and just say, I saw the truth, right? And if a party is out there and they find the truth, right, and they come around, that's normal, right? Oftentimes you're going along with something and you think it's right, and then you find out it's wrong, and you just change your mind, or rather you figure out that your position isn't as strong as you thought. Maybe you thought you had a really strong position initially. Well, you flip sides, right? And the most important thing is you flip to the objective truth. So if what Ethan Klein is saying is the objective truth, and I'm putting an if, because once again, we have to be fair. We have to let things play out. We have to see all the evidence, right? But if what Ethan Klein is saying is true, and she flipped over to the side of truth, that's a very strong argument for her credibility. That would make her very credible, right? In fact, that's the most credibility, right? So there are these arguments. These will play out during cross-examination, during trial. So if Denims does take this all the way, we're going to see this happen live in 4K. It's going to be great. Perhaps, well, once again, whether or not, the televised part, perhaps not. But we will get to see the filings play out, the general description of it, right? Even if things aren't televised, there's going to be people in that courtroom, I guarantee, telling us exactly what's going down. So we're going to get the objective truth eventually. We're going to get the bottom of the matter, and that's going to be coming up in the court case. But as part of this, I also saw some online discussion, which I thought was interesting. And I want to bring up because it was from some Hassan orbiters. And these are new arguments I saw, which were kind of cute and creative by the Hassan orbiters. So one argument was that Ethan should limit his fair use argument to intentionally stated malice only. This was very creative, points for creativity. But at the end of the day, as the judge here, I got to tell you, that's not how fair use or legal argument works. When arguing fair use, you have to argue all of the factors. You can't just argue one factor of fair use. You have to argue all of them. And in legal argument, even if you have a weak argument, you make that argument to the best of your ability for each of the factors of the law. And that's your job to do as a lawyer, is to make those arguments as convincingly as possible. Even if you have a relatively weak position, you've got to try to argue even from a weak position. And perhaps you have one element that's more strong on your side, like intentionally stated malice. That is going to be more on the side of Ethan Klein. That's very true. That's very fair. However, that doesn't mean he needs to limit his argument. That would be not just crippling his argument, that might be dooming his argument. So, of course, a Hassan orbiter would like that because, well, they want Kaceytron, or they want brother Frogan and Denims and the mods to win, right? There also were some cute little arguments from some people, including some of the same orbiters, that say this will not set significant new precedent. And then there's people that, in the same breath, in fact, I saw one account say this will set new precedent that's dangerous. So they said both it will not set significant new precedent and it will set dangerous new precedent. So pick a side, bro. I don't know which side you're trying to pick there. But on both of those, just to comment on that, it is going to create precedent. Look, if Denims takes this through and this is litigated all the way, there'll be precedent, right? Obviously. Now, significance is speculative and subjective. We don't know what the judge is going to rule or how this is going to come down. So we don't know exactly how landmark this case is going to be. However, will the precedent be dangerous? Well, it will set it as to malicious statements and as to reaction content, but I don't think it's going to ban reaction content. I think we have enough precedent out there that reaction content is okay in certain contexts. I don't think that's going to be overruled entirely. However, we may have more of a balance to the force. We may have something say, okay, there is a limit on reaction content. And I think it would be helpful to say, okay, yes, if you're just leaving a chair there and like walking off, right? Maybe that's not reaction content, right? Maybe that is something that is, right? And looking at the percentages, looking at the arguments, Denims makes an argument that she added 120%. Maybe the judge takes that as another factor. Maybe they don't. They don't. We'll see, right? Or the jury factors that in. We'll see what happens here. So this is something that we don't yet know the answer to. We're trying to figure out the answer here to what the precedent will be. But if it goes through, there will be something, right? There will be something that changes. And I think the intent and the intentionally stated malice, yeah, it will be the thing that's most important here. But making the argument, you got to make the whole argument. You got to make a complete argument. So that said, guys, that's my thoughts on this new evidence. I think this is a very opportune filing, and we were going to see a lot coming from this, a lot in this legal saga. The filings will be piling in January 2026. This is going to be something very active that you'll be seeing me cover on my channel as things go down. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will catch you on the next one.